Coming up on the Open Source podcast with Tony Mottley, how the COVID-19 pandemic is changing how colleges deliver education.
They're not freaking out. I don't think that's the case in anybody I've talked to, but there is a heavy feeling like, wait a minute, folks, things are not the same. We cannot continue to do the same old. It's just not in the cards. So, but it's basically, the feeling, which is you better man up and you better deal with it.
It's certain that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our worldview. In the future, we'll see life as before and after COVID-19. As the fall quickly approaches, universities are grappling with how they will prepare to serve their student populations. With more than 600,000 living alumni, including yours truly, the University of Michigan is one of the largest academic institutions in the United States. Tim Kiska has been teaching media and journalism studies at the University of Michigan's Dearborn campus for 20 years, and he joins me to share his insight on how education has been changed by the global pandemic. Tim, welcome to Open Source.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm here.
Usually people don't speak on issues like this. It's just, there's like hands off. Why are you so bold and daring, Tim?
Well, first of all, I just want to make sure I know you understand this, but I'm not speaking for the university.
Absolutely.
I'm not in the administration building, anything like that. But I'm just another guy in the trenches. But on the other hand, I'm another guy in the trenches. But I think people might want to hear. It's a lot of times it's their tax dollars at work. They're trying to figure out, okay, what goes on at this place too. And also, obviously people are thinking, well, should I send my kid there or not? And I'm just another guy in the trenches. So, whatever I can do to enlighten anybody, I'm happy to do it. So.
And that's an interesting perspective. Have people approached you, just regular folks in the community that know you're involved in education? Have they approached you and asked you, or what have they said to you?
Well, I think there are so many questions out there, which is, I think one thing that people are thinking about, and they're not always asking me directly, but okay, Tony, if you've got a 17-year-old graduating senior, the question is, should I be sending them up to a dorm at Michigan State or Central or Northern? How does that work? Do you want to be doing that? Another question that gets out there is, okay, fine, you enroll, but they're not holding face-to-face classes. You're just doing it. You're doing it online. Are you missing part of the university experience that way? And if so, if you're not getting the whole university experience, why are you paying that kind of, why am I paying that kind of tuition? Which is another question that I think people ask all the time. So, I think this thing is going to reverberate on a whole bunch of different levels. Places like Michigan State, they make money off their football programs, What happens if you don't have the football program? And this goes on and on and on. So I think this thing is rocking the very foundations of education, higher education. It's rocking the foundations of everything, as you know.
I
everything.
Think if you took a historical view, in the past, I know wars have interrupted education, like World War II had to, but you don't really see much written about how it impacted the college students. But what do we know about similar disruptions and how they changed things?
Well, there's never been anything quite this widespread. Think of it, first of all, from a health perspective. When have we ever had a situation where you could go someplace and you could catch something and you could die? We've just never ridden with that. But, and also at the exact same time, it's this widespread job loss. I think the latest numbers that are just out yesterday was 14.5% unemployment, and it's probably higher than that. My question is, okay, for my students, Tony and I, you and I are in the same place. Almost everybody works. doing everything from, driving, trucks to, making pizzas. I mean, you name it, working as clerks at retail establishments. Well, wait a minute, that's all gone right now. Is it coming back? Who knows? What about their folks? How many of their folks have been tossed out of work? Maybe working in a factory and aren't working at the moment. Who knows what kind of speed the factories are going to be at. So I think we've never been in a situation like this where, the whole foundation has just been somehow rocked in a big way. So, I mean, this is new territory entirely.
When you think about income and work, if a family hasn't had a paycheck in 2 months and they get back to work tomorrow, the thing is they've spent whatever savings they had. Can they afford now to send a kid to college now? That's
a great question.
Yeah.
That's a big issue. That's a large issue. And so we're not going to really know, until the fall, if that's going to work. And we don't even know right now. We're talking, Tony, I don't know how long this podcast is going to be up, but we're a third of the way through May. We still don't know what form we're going to be up in September. Are we going to be live with an open campus, or are we going to be doing everything online? Nobody knows. Nobody knows how that's going to work yet.
And I think as university has always been forward thinking, and there have been classes online offered, but never to the level that they're doing right now. The winter semester that just ended in the summer is all online. How are they preparing to deliver, if they have to, the entire course catalog online?
Well, what they're doing is they put together a program that they'll help you transfer your courses online. So they've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort, giving you resources. So if you're totally befuddled, they've got some pretty smart people out there who are helping on all this and helping you do that. They've also put some incentives out there. In terms of, okay, if you get, 3 of your courses all set online to go, we've got an incentive here for you. I haven't looked at it closely, but I think it's course releases. If you get a certain number on there. So they're pushing everybody. I mean, they're not being nasty about it, but they're pushing everybody. And I think most people realize, this is real, and if you can't move your stuff online, well, you're going to be left in the dust because, we may not be live in September. So it's something that you just got to do. And, they've been diplomatic about it, but I think everybody understands this is the reality, and get used to it or die,
And I think, too, in a broader view, there have been institutions like Arizona State University that's offered a really comprehensive online program before the pandemic. And they've made significant headway and had great success doing that. And I know that other institutions have looked at what Arizona State was doing, and that's gotten their attention. Has that been discussed at University of Michigan at all?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit at our shop, University of Michigan, Dearborn. They've been pushing now. Don't hold me to this, but at least a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years. They've been telling people, look, you need to get stuff online. You need to get stuff online. And in our particular department, we started doing some stuff online, and it was quite successful. I mean, I had a class in business automotive reporting last summer. That normally that one is something that you say business and automotive reporting, people would go, this is going to be boring. I don't want to do that. And I would get just enough to get into the wire and get the thing taught. Well, I got, so I'd have to get 10 students to make it. And I get about 10 students. I put this thing online. I got 17 right out the chute. So I'm only a guy with a double-digit IQ, but I get the picture, that people like it. So no, they've been pushing us to paying more attention to this for a number of years now. And I think now it's gone from, it'd be really good. You better do this. It's a good thing to do to, you've got to do this, and then there are no more excuses. There just aren't. I think that there might be some blowback from a few people, but, everybody just realizes this is the reality.
I think, too, when you look at having an open campus and all of the variables that are involved in that, and I don't know how, I'm not smart enough to know how we could keep a place clean. And when you get the idea that people are going, not only coming to campus, but they're going to all kind of other places. If you look at it from the point of view of contact tracing, how could you ever really say it's safe?
Exactly. I mean, you can't. And I know that that's something that they're going to have to, I think they're talking about social distancing, but I think they're working this thing through. But that, for instance, if you think about it, Tony, you've been there. So there might be a classroom with maybe room for 30 people. Maybe they'll come back and say, okay, we're going to max this out at 15. So people are sitting, chairs apart, that sort of thing. So all of this right now is being thought through, this only went down where we closed up, don't hold me to the date, but I think March 12th in through there, about midway through March, like everybody else went down. And I think right now they're just, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And so I know all of this is being discussed, and the chancellor's holding a town meeting, I think, early next week to deal with this and deal with the questions. And right now there aren't a lot of any firm or a lot of firm answers because, Tony, nobody knows. Nobody knows what this is going to look like in September. Is there going to be another wave? In other words, will this go down, let's say, July, and then come back with a vengeance in September? If anybody knows the answer to that, they're the smartest person in the world.
Yeah, and there's really no way to predict. And, of course, you also have a ton of conspiracy theories about
oh, God.
And that, that kind of adds to the people just kind of losing their minds about what's going on. But I think, at the end of the day, going to college, people spend the money to improve their lives. And they're spending a lot of money. And now they may not have that money. And it's a business decision, too. I think it's a business decision for the people that are students. It's a business decision for universities, too.
Well, and this is just me talking to you here, so I don't represent the university in any way, shape, or form. But we'd better have a really good answer to the question of when somebody like a Tony Mottley would go, okay, why should I spend a whole boatload of money to go to your college? You better have a good answer, And I think before it was a little bit more like, well, it's what you do. You go to college so you can, have a better life. Well, I think, that's, you better have a really good, firm, strong answer right now. And I'm not sure we've done a great job. We're not talking the University of Michigan Dearborn, just higher ed in general. I'm not sure that we've done a good job as we probably could have of selling this and saying, hey, this is what you get when you get a college education.
And I think, too, there was an article in the New Yorker, I think about a week ago, and it just kind of addressed the idea of these more elite Harvard, more elite institutions and what their offerings are and how this pandemic is going to change all that. And the whole idea of spending a lot of money to go to a place may not be an option for people anymore. And if you look at it from some perspectives, is it really worth the money? And I think so now you're going to have people starting to rethink this whole thing. And I think when you think about what it cost to go to college 50 years ago, you hear Elizabeth Warren had said that when she was campaigning for president, she was, hundreds of dollars. Now you're talking tens of thousands of dollars for the same thing, I guess. But I mean, it's gotten crazy too, the pricing.
I paid my way through college at Wayne State University in the 70s. I was a copy boy at the Detroit Free Press, sharpening pencils and doing errands and getting cigarettes for people. I paid for my education on a copy boy's salary, which was like a pittance. And now, I mean, you couldn't do that, and you just couldn't do that. Now, I'm not expert enough to know why that cost. Well, there are different reasons why that cost jumped over the years. One of them is that our place, and a lot of other places, we were getting maybe 80% of our budget out of Lansing. Now it's down to it's under 20%. So the money from the state, has been kind of drying up. And this has happened over a period of time. That's part of it. There are a lot of other reasons. I'm not familiar enough with all of the college higher ed financing, but that's an issue that you're raising a good issue there. Which is, I mean, how can you afford to do this these days?
And I think
is it worth it?
Yes, and think about the educational outcomes. Is there any data, any studies that say this is what you get when you're on campus versus this is the outcome for people who are doing it online? And is there...
that's a great question. I've never seen any data like that. Well, my guess is that as you're speaking, people are going to start putting this together. But that's a great question. That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to this. I can tell you anecdotally, and this is just anecdotally, the stuff that I've seen my students do online is, it's as good as the stuff that they do in class. I think what you're missing, though, is that kind of one-on-one or that group discussion, which you can kind of do online. But like when you were in my class, we would start talking about something, and you would chime in, and people would react, and I always thought that was a very valuable experience for people.
I think there's a community in a classroom, and right. Especially if you have a diverse classroom, you've got people from different backgrounds, different ages, and they can share. And having taken courses both in classrooms and online, you don't get that online. You just don't. And even if it's a course where people kind of have a discussion board and they could type out their answers, it's not the same as people having the conversation.
No, not at all. Not at all. But what else are you going to do at this point? This is not going to last forever. If you told me that this is going to last for another 2 years, I wouldn't be wildly surprised. But that's, so it will get back, but in what form, who knows? I just don't know the answer to that. Nobody knows the answer to that.
And I think too, it's changing education. And if you think about it more in the K-12 realm, that's a whole nother thing. But I think what I'm saying is that it's really going to change every part of our lives. Totally. Which we're seeing now, and I hear people fussing about let's get back to normal, and I just don't really think that's going to happen. And there's going to be a new normal. I think that's what it is. Right,
and if you just think about what this is, what this has touched. I always think about what's happened at Disney, right? The Disney Corporation, which I always thought, okay, this is an unassailable empire, unassailable. There's no way you could ever take down Disney because it's everywhere, right? And look at what happens to these guys. Well, their theme parks, they're closed up right now, so they ain't going anywhere there. They've got a cruise line. Well, Tony, what do you think is going to happen to the cruise line business?
They could give me a lifetime pass, and I'd never go.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people are going to be thinking twice about this. ESPN. Well, wait a minute. That was the big moneymaker of almost any network going. Well, there's no sports. So what are they doing? not to mention, the television and film industry is pretty much closed down. They're not producing much, at least not right now. So even Disney, which you never thought anything could touch them, it was sort of like its own country practically. Well, even those folks have been clobbered. So everything from my neighborhood deli, to anything you can think of, it's not the same anymore, and it's not going to be the same. I don't know how it's ever going to come back.
Right. I don't know how it could be
that way.
I don't think so either. And I think getting back to the subject at hand, I mean, again, how do you send little Johnny off to East Lansing or Palo Alto or Notre Dame or wherever, and just as a parent feel like he or she is going to be safe? I don't know when we're going to get back to that. And I mean, there's always been a risk. I mean, because there's other things that impact kids when they're away at school, but this is extreme.
Exactly. So, I think Dearborn, my place, is a little bit more, we might be equipped to weather this somehow in terms of if parents say, well, instead of sending my kid up to Northern, the kid's going to stay home and maybe get a year under their belt over at U of M Dearborn or something like that. Maybe. I don't know that that's going to happen or not going to happen, or I think they're dealing with that. But I could see that kind of outcome, that we might have something to offer, in that sphere. I'm told Wayne State may not be doing so bad. So there you go.
So maybe this is a bonus for commuter schools as opposed to the larger residential institutions. That could be. It could be. It's hard to say how people are going to decide.
Well, exactly. You don't know. You just don't know. So I mean, it's everybody's thinking about it, and everybody's sort of grasping for answers and coming up with some pretty good theories and planning as best they can. But I think that everybody's sort of just got to be fast on their feet to get through this thing.
I think too, it kind of begs the question too, if my goal was to go to some big elite school and now it's not safe for me to do that, my parents aren't going to pay for it, and so I'm say forced to go to U of M Dearborn or Wayne State or whatever. Am I less educated? I mean, there's some perceptions about what we're getting from the bigger, more elite programs and what we're getting from other schools. And I don't know how different it really is. No one really has talked about that, but that's a question that's in my mind. I mean, I can't go to Harvard now, so I'm going to go, up the street to Wayne State or whatever. How worse off am I because I can't go to some big school? Tony, I've often sort of wondered that my entire life. I'm a Wayne State guy. That's where I went, from the beginning to get all the way up to my PhD. So I'm thinking, okay, let's put it this way. I think that if you have a Harvard degree, I think that helps your marketing yourself. But that's branding, though. That's Harvard's branding, right? Exactly. It's Harvard's branding. So if they see Tony Mottley, Harvard, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, it's still Tony right. Mottley. And that's Harvard. The definition of branding. There's this perception of you based on something. And it may, like you say, it may or may not mean that I know more, I'm smarter than, I don't know. And I think you're right. I think people probably always think that. Nobody says it out loud, but people have always wondered that. Oh yeah, and now is the faculty at Harvard? Well, I mean, they've got people that are publishing stuff that will blow your mind out there. One of my favorite historians is one by the name of Jill Lepore, who's over at Harvard. She is beyond phenomenal. There aren't very many folks like her. I think we've got a really good faculty at U of M Dearborn, but sorry, folks, it really isn't Harvard. It's good. In fact, it's really good. But I think that there's a little bit of a difference there.
I think we're about is that I don't think at Harvard you can actually speak with the faculty members, whereas at our place, I think the campus culture flat out is that if you're a faculty member, a student walks into your office, you keep the door, you offer, can I get you a cup of coffee? Have a seat. Good to see you. Come on in, and here, what's up? What's on your mind? And that's our culture. I'm not sure a lot of the other big elite places, I think you end up with a teaching assistant to say, oh, yes, you want to speak to Professor Mottley? Fat chance. What do you need?
Right.
I'll take care of it for him.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, too, it's going to be, I think at some point, it's going to be, that idea is going to be challenged. I think there are going to always be people that want to go to Harvard or whatever. But I think this is a reckoning for a lot of institutions, because when people can't pay or people are terrified to be there, I don't know what the branding of Harvard can't overcome that.
Maybe not, and so that's why everybody now is, I don't know if you're calling it freaking out so much as, okay, where do we go now? So,
do you feel like within the people that you've talked to, in your circles, are they freaking out?
No, they're not. No, not at all. They're not freaking out. I don't think that's the case in anybody I've talked to. But there is a heavy feeling like, wait a minute, folks, things are not the same. We cannot continue to do the same old. That's not, it's just not in the cards. So I hate to use the word man up, because that sort of maybe has some sexist implications, but it's basically, the feeling, which is you better man up and you better deal with it. And man up, I mean, in a totally non-sexist term.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Now, I mean, you're a PhD in history. So what does history, I know this is unique, this hasn't happened before, but is there any historical lesson or perspective that you could offer?
Well, I just did a podcast on the 1918 flu pandemic across the world, but I concentrated on Detroit. Here in Detroit, there were 4 waves: spring of 1918, fall of 1918, another in 1919. Last, 4th and final wave was the winter of 1920. Now, by the way, this coronavirus, it's called a novel coronavirus, NOVEL, because we've never had this kind of thing before. Exactly. So it's hard to compare it 100% with what happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu. But the point being, it came back 4 times. And I think a lot of the experts now are saying this could easily, it could recede for a while, and then it could come back, and it could come back in many waves. In other words, Detroit might be okay, but all of a sudden, Kansas City or Denver or someplace like that goes boom, like that.
And I listened to your podcast, and the thing that struck me was that, like today, a lot of political and business leaders wanted to just get back to normal, and they kind of jumped the gun on that. And that helped spread the disease. And we see it now.
Made it worse. Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing. There was a lot of pushback. And then, unlike now, the governor said, Albert Sleeper says, well, we're going to close the state. And a lot of municipalities and places kind of said, no, I don't think so. I'd rather not. And it made it stick. So I think the difference between then and now also is, if you think of 1918, 1919, radio, there wasn't even such a thing as radio until 1920. So what do we got now? My God, we've got radio, we've got over-the-air television, we got cable television, we got the web, we got social media, and it's kind of in your, not, I guess, I don't know, is in your face is the right word, but it's ubiquitous. And I think that people, you can't hide from it at this point. And I think it's really helped get the word out that if you go out, you could be not only putting yourself at risk, but you could be putting a lot of other people at risk. I think that message has been drilled down.
I think you're right. I think when you look at the polling data, it reflects that. Right. Unfortunately, you've got this, and I don't want to be political, but you've got politicians across the country in different states, governors, that are not adhering to the government's own guidelines. Right. And so that's the problem. Many people are ready to get back out there and do stuff, cut hair and get tattoos and massages. It's ridiculous, but yet, this is what we're confronting right now.
Exactly. And I think that, I think the other difference too is people are, I think that when somebody says something stupid, whatever that definition, that's not, we don't have to be political here, but if somebody says something that you don't particularly like, before you probably didn't have to hear it in 1918 because the only thing that was out there really was newspapers and word of mouth. Now, you open up Facebook and there's some doofus saying something that makes you crazy. I think that's sort of turned up the political pressure in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think it's inescapable now. I think that's the big difference as before, where you were driven by newspapers. You said, there's so much media out there, and it's so opportune for people to find only the voices that they agree with and just dig in there and stay there. And so this kind of, but again, this crisis is so pervasive, it doesn't matter what you fool yourself into believing. If you come in contact with the wrong person or a wrong situation and you get it, you got it. And God knows what's going to happen to you at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really, Tim, I really appreciate you discussing this with me and this audience. And you also, I recommend to people the Detroit History podcast that Tim produces. It's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah,
it is. I think anybody that has any concern or interest in history has to download the Detroit History podcast. And I think we don't think of Detroit. Detroit is a city that's on the border of two countries, United States and Canada, and is the heart of manufacturing for a long time, for a century at least, in this country in a large way. And so a lot of things that happened in industry and in politics happened in Detroit. And Tim, you really covered that really well and continue to do so. So I appreciate you sharing your insights and thoughts with the audience of Open Source. And I appreciate it, Tim Kiska. And we'll talk to the rest of you guys next time. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tony. It's appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim. Open Source with Tony Mottley is a production of Duet Digital Media and McLaughlin Media.